Welcome to Cinemophile, where we bring you the best in independent, documentary, and foreign films, and we talk to the people who made them. I'm your host, Mike Caspar, and you can find out more about the program by going to cinemophilepod.com. An expansive and revelatory look inside at the 18 months John and Yoko spent living in Greenwich Village in the 1970s. Oscar-winning filmmaker Kevin Macdonald's 1-to-1 John and Yoko delivers an immersive and cinematic experience that brings to life electrifying and never-before-seen material and newly restored footage of John Lennon's only full-length post-Beatle concert. We are joined today by the co-director as well as editor of this beautifully done documentary film called 1-to-1 John and Yoko. That would be Sam Rice-Edwards. Sam, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Mike. Lovely to be here.
There is so much to appreciate in this film for people who may or may not know anything about John and Yoko or John Lennon beyond that he was a Beatle. This is just such a beautifully done, well-told story. You don't need to know a lot. You just need to know that these were two fascinating, interesting artists who lived in a very tumultuous period of time in our history. How did you become a part of this documentary project?
Well, Kevin Macdonald, the director, called me and sort of said he had this project. And, as soon as he said what it was, I was like, yes. Working with Kevin is always, a great adventure and the subject matter as well. I just felt like something good, something really great has to come of this.
Yeah, you'd work with him on Whitney, the documentary about Whitney Houston, as well as Life, what was it, Life in the
Life in a Day, 2020. Yeah. Yeah, we've done quite a few things together actually, and I always find him somebody who's really fantastic to work with.
Yeah, he is. And I've found in his work that he gets under the covers of so much of the subjects, that he and the stories that he tackles. He gets to an essence, if you will, to what the story is. And that feels like that's what this is. So just to kind of explain to people, kind of the entry point is this concert that John and Yoko gave in reaction to a horrific situation at Willowbrook. Let's talk a little bit about that because it frames so much of the story. It gives us, there's just so much there about their relationship and about that period of time. Let's just how this concert bears on this film.
Well, basically, I mean, the concert was really the starting point for the film, and that's that's the reason that the film exists. Is the Lennon estate had this footage and audio from this concert, which was the only concert that John gave after leaving the Beatles ever. Obviously Yoko was also performing at that concert and a number of other people. But they had this, and it kind of sat on a shelf for a long, long time. And I think they, got to a point where they were like, we need to do something with this. It's something that's really quite special. They basically, Peter Worsley, the producer, got involved, and it was something, that he sort of was really looking around to sort of find the right person to bring the concert footage to life. They didn't, no one really knew how to use it or what it could be. And so anyway, they got Kevin involved. Kevin got me involved, and we kind of worked out how to make a film with this kind of concert at the core of it. During the making of the film, we always kind of came back to this thing of like, this is John Lennon's only concert after leaving the Beatles. And, it was kind of easy to forget as we were making the film, but it's a very special piece of archive.
Yeah. And there's a kind of a narrative about John and Yoko, but John in particular, that after he left the Beatles, he was sort of adrift. There was kind of this thing that he was just holed up in this apartment and he did some weird things. He was hanging out with weird people. And so it sort of muddies the waters in terms of his life, but also how clear-eyed he is in this performance in the film.
Yeah, I think the thing is that, and that's another thing that we kept on coming back to as we were making the film, is just how impressive of a performer he is. And I think that he had just such amazing experience through the Beatles especially in the early days, doing those performances in Germany, sort of 6 hours a day, day in, day out, that he was just, he had become such a master at doing it. So even though he hadn't performed, hadn't done a full concert in a couple of years, I'm not exactly sure how long. And even though he didn't have the Beatles around him, he had the, Elephant Memory Band with him, who maybe arguably are not quite on the same musical standard as, as the Beatles. Even though, given all that kind of situation, he could still create a sort of legendary performance for the audience.
Absolutely. And I don't want to give any more away than is need be, but his performance of the material from his first solo record is amazing. And
Mm,
he does some Beatle material, he does some, but his performance of Mother is, I can't think of another well-known artist who could be that raw
mm,
in a
you bet.
concert setting. I just
Yeah.
don't think I've ever seen it. I know I've never seen it quite
Mm,
that way. And in some ways, really feels like, I don't want to say the high point of the film, but it just feels like there's something, an emotional core to that performance that just is just so in part of this film in why it resonates. I don't know if that's a fair assessment or not.
no, no, I think it is. I mean, it's a sort of hard thing to talk about. I'm not definitely not trying to put myself forward as an expert on John Lennon
Yeah,
wholesale. You know what I mean? I'm a filmmaker, and we made this film, but at the same time, the impression that I really came away with is that he was someone who was always trying to explore
yeah,
himself and explore who he was, and bettering yourself is maybe the wrong term, but to kind of try and face his demons and be honest about himself, and he that's who he was. And I think you're right that that kind of set him apart maybe from a lot of other musicians at the time. And so that's why that he can go up and kind of bare his soul with a song like Mother and get with
yeah.
something so personal.
In
um
front of 15, 20,000 people, just to
yeah,
be completely emotionally naked and
exactly.
telling, and to be able to deliver an amazing performance.
Mm,
And I want to return to this film in the sense of Yoko is an amazing woman, amazing part
yeah,
of this film. I'm so glad that she is getting her due in the
yeah.
telling of this story because she's remarkable. And again, another sort of in the haze of the aftermath of the Beatles, reviled, belittled, racism, sexism, the whole thing, and to see their relationships and just there's so much here to be emotionally invested in watching this film because it's a very moving film. It is. I just from start to finish. And not only that, the sort of the history of New York City, America, where we were in 1971, 72, beautifully captured in this film. And I'm going to just, my hat's off to you as an editor because this is an editor's film. I'm sorry. Sorry,
Thank
Kevin,
you.
with all due respect. Kevin Macdonald. There's so much about this film that is about putting these images in front of us at the right times in the film. So congratulations.
Oh, thank you. No, it means a lot. It's really lovely to hear that, and you're right. It is an editor's film. I mean, I guess ultimately Kevin was a huge part of the edit as well, and so like in a way we were both kind of editing it together, and that's why he gave me a kind of co-directing credit as well. So we were sort of in it together, but it was a sort of fascinating edit in many ways because really a lot of the early part of the edit was not really kind of thinking too much about narrative structure. Obviously that was something that we always were thinking about, but really we were just instinctively thinking like, oh, maybe we can cut this to this, or and really just following instinct um and feeling and sort of emotion as opposed to logic. And so we were building a lot of sections of the film, obviously a lot of sections that didn't end up in the film as well, but just experimenting with different ideas, maybe a montage over a track, or like different scenes, and slowly through this process, which was a bit kind of free form, we started kind of building a lot of sections, and the stronger sections we started putting together and started piecing together in and finding a narrative through path that really told the story of the journey of John and Yoko through this time and the world that they were in. That's why the culmination of it feels, like a sort of magical mystery tour of editing, because we kind of really approached it from a kind of experimental, instinctual angle.
And the beauty of it is it doesn't feel forced.
Mm,
I'm so glad that what you described, sort of how this came together, but another maybe possible Beatle reference, pardon me, yeah, it just does. It really, really works and provides a context for that time, which is not an easy thing to do. It's
mm.
just not. There was so much going on so many different levels, and when you have an artist, a polarizing artist involved in the telling of this story, and it's a beautiful, beautiful film. I just want to remind our listeners we're speaking with the co-director, along with Kevin Macdonald, but Sam Rice Edwards, as well as you mentioned, co-editor on this amazing film, 121, John and Yoko. And without getting into too much of the sort of the times, the Vietnam War is obviously a huge part, politics, the stuff from Attica was so powerful. There's just that reporter John Johnson what was his name? John
Yeah,
Johnson.
I can't remember his name, but it's a very powerful moment when he can't carry on, and you realize what's happening. It's extremely upsetting.
Yeah, and this is happening in New York City. Attica was a huge deal. There was a prison riot, prison uprising,
Yeah.
and the police went in, and I believe the National Guard, and just slaughtered a whole lot of people. So there's that. And also there's some interesting kind of his relationship with David Peele, Jerry Rubin, Allen Ginsberg, all the people that we kind of know of, but it provides a context for all of that as well.
Mhm. Yeah, and exactly. I mean, I think that's what we were trying to do is, we were trying to portray the world that they saw. We wanted people to get to know John and Yoko, so we were in a way that they hadn't done before. And so, part of what we were trying to do is not force a narrative on the film, but actually just spend time with John and Yoko and hearing them and seeing them in ways that they were when they were away from the public eye, but also seeing the world that they saw. And, naturally through that, you had all these characters who kind of popped up who were in their circle. So I guess the culmination of it is what we were trying to do is create a snapshot of how it was. So you kind of experience it in a bit more of a raw way, as opposed to having a kind of narrative dictated to you from the film, from the filmmakers. You can find your own roots through that time. So it's just in doing that, we were trying to provide a kind of cinematic experience for people that's a bit new and a bit fresh.
And those phone conversations are important. The bed is important. John and Yoko's relationship in these small moments when he's defending her against all this kind of nonsense that's being thrown in her direction, to see her as a conceptual artist and not as just a kooky girlfriend or wife. The women's movement, Willowbrook, and this is the world they lived in, and they embraced so much of it as an opportunity instead of a distraction, instead of
Mhm.
something to run away from and he was also clear-eyed about to the degree to which John was clear-eyed about not wanting to be anywhere near violence, and he kept coming back to that as a concept and something he lived by in his life.
That was something that we were struck with definitely making the film is Kevin saying, God, they don't hang around, do they? And it's like, no, they did. They were always doing things. They're always connecting to stuff, always plans and different organizations and concerts and art shows and like it just all the time. And also thinking about them doing that all the time that Yoko was dealing with the fact that she had lost her daughter, in effect. Her daughter had been kidnapped and she had been vilified in the press in the UK. So, I definitely came away from the film feeling that Yoko's an extremely strong person to have dealt with all of that, but also to have been kind of vivacious and attacked life in a kind of energetic way at the same time as dealing with those really difficult emotional things. Must have, she would have to be extremely strong to deal with that.
Yeah, and to be in every measure equal to John Lennon in their relationship and in
Mm,
their ambition and where they were in their life, and also providing a context for their home life, as just two people who are deeply in love with one another, with, I'm sure, all kinds of issues between any two people getting together. But
mm,
yeah, I can't say enough about this. It's just, there's the Beatle part, there's the other stuff, although the Beatle part is tangential to all of this. It's there, but and he says at the very beginning of the film in a phone call with somebody on a radio show, I'm not a Beatle. I'm a person. I can't say enough about tackling so many different things in his life and the things that we're vaguely familiar with, and having it come out on the other end is something there's so much clarity in the context of all of it. Congratulations.
oh, thank you very much, Mike. No, it really means a lot to hear that.
We've been talking with the co-director, and that would be Sam Rice Edwards, as well as co-editor, along with Kevin Macdonald in this project. 121 John and Yoko. Be looking for this. As it's an electrifying film on so many different levels. Sam Rice Edwards, thank you so very, very much for your time today. Thank you for your work, and hope to see you again sometime down the road. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mike. It's really, really great to chat. A real pleasure.
You have been listening to Cinemaphile with Mike Kaspar, the place where you will hear from the best in independent documentary and foreign filmmakers. Please check out our previous interviews as well as upcoming interviews and special programming by going to cinemaphilepod.com. We are also available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube, searchable under Cinemaphile with Mike Kaspar. Until next time, thank you for listening.